Hey, welcome back to another episode of I'm Not Actually a Gas Station Attendant. I believe it's episode 6, but it might be episode 7. We've decided that the focus of this podcast will be, as it always was, I guess, early to mid-90s basement hardcore punk with a huge emphasis on Michigan, specifically southwestern Michigan. And today we have all 4 members of the Renobs, 4/5 of Insogrey. And introduce yourselves, guys. Oh, and hi, Ian.
Hello. And that's everybody.
Adam.
Hi, everybody.
This is Adam over here. I'm currently in Brooklyn, where I live.
This is Andy Cornell. I live in Tacoma, Washington, these days.
You go next, Andrea.
This is Andrea. I'm in Mattawan, Michigan.
And this is Dusty, and I am in Vicksburg, Michigan.
Thanks for having us on, Rich and Ian.
Yeah, totally.
We're so pro at this. Anyway, so how about we start with you guys? However far back you want to start with your musical endeavors is fine. But, go at it.
Okay, so when I was a 7th grader in middle school and I discovered my dad's guitar and his Simon and Garfunkel books. No, I'm sorry, I'll stop.
You were a big fan of ska, as I recall, Dusty.
Yeah, for about 6 weeks.
And he burned through the whole catalog, and then he was done.
Yeah, no, it was cool. And then I was like, okay, I get it.
Well, once you pick it up.
Yeah. Well done, Ian.
Thank you. I'll be here all week. I'll be here all podcast.
Oh my God. So are you guys you guys getting sponsorships yet? Because this is good already.
I think our moms will like this. I think that was in sponsorship by our moms.
When are you gonna do the Indeed.com ad?
When I go on the internet, I use Indeed.com just because.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
We're sponsored by horn-rimmed glasses, I guess.
and big black Sharpies.
and gas station jackets and gas station
And I'm
shirts.
assuming Kinko's,
Yeah.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Spitboy t-shirts.
the unofficial sponsor of 1994.
So
Made everything
did y'all meet in high school?
Middle school.
We did.
Middle together.
I did not. The story of when I met Andy, I was a sophomore. No, I was a freshman. He was a sophomore. We were in Spanish class, and he was like, "Oh, there's a guy who looks kind of slightly counterculture," and he was like, "Oh, so hey, what kind of music are you into?" And I was like, "REM," and he said, "We'll fix that."
Did I actually say that?
Yes, you did. No, it was awesome. It was great. And I was like, you're right, that band is kind of a one-trick pony.
I think we're all going to very quickly discover that we were all dicks at that
Oh,
point.
I was a dick.
For sure.
I think that was a formative part of being part of, DIY in Kalamazoo, was you definitely had to have a kind of exclusionary attitude.
You had to sharpen your dick skills.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the only one of us who was never a dick was you, Andrea.
Yeah. Didn't you yell at Andy once because he was being goofy and stay asleep over? I feel like that happened.
I was probably tired. I was old and tired even then, man. Something did not change. No. I knew Andy. So, Adam and Dusty and I were all in the same grade. And, we knew each other in middle school just from kind of, being in proximity to each other. And then Andy was a year ahead of us. And I don't know how we really met Andy.
I rode the bus with Andy, and we would talk on the bus occasionally, and then I remember some mouth breather kid that sat next to me in English who had a lot of chickens, lit the school on fire, and they had a half day. And he started a small fire. He started a small fire in the gym locker room or something. And then I went to Andy's house and I think we ate frozen pizza or something and hung out all day. That was the first time I remember hanging out with Andy. Because we were unaccounted for the rest of the day because of the fire.
That's a good story.
Well, and
I remember
Adam,
that vaguely.
you remember when we met for the first time, because it was 4th grade at Angling Road Elementary.
5th grade, I think.
5th grade, was it?
Yeah.
And you showed up, you came from, what was it, Tennessee?
Yeah, I'd moved from Memphis.
Yeah, so you rolled up and then you were like, this dude's kind of cool, but then you had to follow me because I had long hair back then, and you had to follow me to the bathroom to make sure I was a boy so we could be friends.
That sounds right. You had a pretty excruciating haircut, if I remember. It had
it was
a forelock of red, just kind of swooped over your face in an awkward way.
I was afraid of haircuts.
Good Lord. Oh boy. Well, I know that you guys all were kind of into different things. You weren't expressly just into hardcore punk, but how did you guys happen upon that?
I can go first, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got into... I visited some cousins who lived on the east side of the state, kind of outside of Detroit, somewhere after 6th grade, and they were into skateboarding, and they had a band, and they were playing Damn Yankees covers and Cinderella covers and Whitesnake covers and things like that. So I thought music was kind of cool, but it was that kind of stuff. And then when I got back to Kalamazoo, I got into skateboarding, and some of the other kids around the middle school that skated kind of found me. And that was these guys, J.C. Carlton and Neil Malmgren. Yeah. And I think basically Neil had an older sister who was already into good music, into punk and into the Smiths and The Cure and Joy Division and things like that. And so that was an entry point for Neil. And pretty young, he started going to DIY shows and getting into things. So my connection to hardcore and punk was through them. They gave me 7 Seconds tapes, Minor Threat tapes, stuff like that. So I was listening to that and Dead Kennedys by 7th, 8th grade, I think. And so then just kind of did a band with a few folks when I guess I was in 9th grade, so I was 14 or something like that. And that was with Chris Sprague and Josh Brockmeyer, who was later in Jihad. And so we had that band called Denial, played a couple shows, and then kind of messed around with a couple other bands that didn't work very well for a year or two, and then ended up doing the Renobs with these guys.
And don't forget that you were in Constatine Sankathi for, a month.
a month, yeah. A couple weeks or something like that. That's true, in there too. But I was trying to think about it. So, I think, starting with if Insogrey grew out of the Renobs, and it just kind of, I think all that speaks to, the big kind of confluence of different styles of DIY music that everyone was into around Kalamazoo, or that we were, so it's I was trying to figure out why was I writing these kind of silly pop punk songs that became the Renobs at first. And one thing that I can think of is, I think if there was when we first started that band, the thing that would be the closest to it was that band Weston from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Weston was, they came through and played at a basement show kind of right across the street from where the Comet Cafe was, or, kind of right there on the Western Michigan University campus. And I just remember they totally blew me away because they were hilarious and really fun and had really great catchy songs too.
Was that at Joel's house?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
at Joel's.
yeah.
Yeah,
but
in
Derek
Joel's
and Joel's.
basement.
Yeah, that was like the Sprague Street. My sister lived with those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys were at that show, but that was like a big influence on me. And I listened to some early Green Day, and I liked Screeching Weasel and stuff like that. But I'm pretty sure like the early Renobs was like fucking Weston. That was awesome. I want to play some music like that.
That show, I remember they kept saying total fucking chouse.
Yes.
Some kid had a skateboard that said total fucking chaos, and some other kid read it as, oh man, total fucking chouse. And that's still really funny to me.
Didn't you take a high school buddy with you to that show, Ian? And
Probably.
He said to you after the show, he's like, I thought your style was pretty original, but you just look like all the other kids at the show.
I had a girlfriend in college when we would go to like visit her, like they would the dudes in the Agna Moraines would come through, and they would call us the clones because we all had the same like big clunky glasses and like work pants on and stuff. Like they're like, oh, the clones are here.
So, Andy, your journey reminds me of how we met because Neil Malmgren and JC, like those guys I was tight with for a while. Like I met Neil in like the 5th grade, and I remember we became friends because I had on my like 3-ring binder cover a bunch of like metal band names like scratched in. Like I had like Dokken and Metallica and Anthrax and all that kind of stuff written all over my binder, and Neil was sitting next to me and he glanced over and he's like, cool, Anthrax, all right. And so like from that point on, like we kind of hung out. And then I'm pretty sure I met then you through them when we were in middle school because they started hanging out, and then we got introduced that way. And so like my sister, who's about 4.5 years ahead of me, was a bass guitar player, and I started playing drums in like the 5th grade because my family's got a lot of musicians in it. And my sister ended up being in a high school band with some other dudes called Dirty Tricks with an X. Yes. And they played around Kalamazoo all over the place, including like a few gentlemen's clubs. And my parents apparently let that shit happen, which was interesting.
Was it Peppers?
Andrea wasn't
Peppers,
recently?
which was the back side of the Mermaid Lounge, which was a topless bar.
I remember me and Jim McInerney went to a show there once. Like, I don't know why we went and saw this band called Playgrind that were really terrible. And then some like metal ladies like tried to buy us drinks, and we got scared and like ran away.
That sounds about right. So anyway, so my sister. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so I just have to cut in. So my cousin's band that I mentioned was called Careless Passion. So that plus Dirty Tricks kind of speaks to the
It was time, man. It was great. So she was in kind of like the sort of burgeoning music scene, and through how many ever series of people that she knew or whatever the journey she was on musically, like I typically, like that's how I got my introduction to a lot of stuff was from her. And she, however it happened, met Joel Wick, who, as we all know,
Please tell us it was at Peppers.
It very well fucking could have been.
Joel was at the bar in Peppers. He'd been there for hours.
I know they met like seeing each other at shows and stuff like that. But I don't remember a lot of the specifics, unfortunately. So like Joel Wick and my sister dated for a million years, and they lived together for forever. So I knew Joel, so I was plugged into the whole scene. That way as well. So I had, a couple of different avenues from those, knowing the crowd from that angle, and then knowing Andy and those guys. So I had been playing drums and taking private lessons since the 5th grade, and I had a set that my uncle, who's a drummer out in California, had sent me for my birthday, and I was in like the middle school like concert band and the high school concert band and that kind of stuff, playing percussion, and Andy and Dusty and Adam were already kind of starting the Renobs or just kind of fooling around at that point. And I had seen all of them play with various other people at like talent shows and shit like that. And I think at one point they were desperate. They had nobody who had drums, and I had drums. So I'm pretty sure that's, they were like, who do we know who has drums that we can con into coming over to Andy's basement? And I don't know how exactly it got brought up, but I'm pretty sure I think it was me and Dusty in an art class in like whatever grade that was, or some classroom, and he's convinced me to come and play. So we packed up my drums and took them to Andy's basement. And
I am super happy to take credit for that, but I do not remember that one bit.
I think, but like musically, my introduction to like hardcore and stuff like that was definitely via my sister, and like kind of her taste, and introduced me to mine, and they were pretty varied to like metal, and then all sorts of rock and all sorts of other stuff, because my parents constantly listened to all sorts of music, and they 100% endorsed any level of musicality or interest we were in. Like I said, they had no problem with her playing at fucking Peppers. So like they had no problem with me being like in a basement band with these weirdos and traveling around or whatever. So
Andrea, the set that you played, that like sweet old jazz set that
Rogers
you played,
Holiday Model, man.
Yeah. Was that your dad's or your uncle's? Or
no,
something?
It was my uncle's. So it was my uncle's.
Yeah.
It was my uncle's, one of his first sets that he had bought, and it's like a late 60s Rogers Holiday Model 3-piece, and he had stripped all the purling off of it and refinished the maple shells, and he wasn't using it. He had obviously different kits that he's using out west, and so when I started lessons, I had a snare and I was taking snare lessons, and then as I was kept going at it, he sent me that whole set for my birthday one year. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you still have that set?
I do. It is set up in my basement, and I played it on a little ditty for a friend's birthday the other day. That Dusty
you did.
Things. It was rough as hell because I had not touched it for like 2 decades prior to that.
No, but it sounded so good, and you sounded so good, and
it was rough as fuck. I've been playing because I played with the Kalamazoo concert band off and on, but I haven't played set since high school. So.
You have never heard a better parody version of Lady Gaga's Born This Day than Andrea and I played. That was like a mini Renobs reunion right there for Mark's 40th birthday video.
Very many. Yeah, but that's my story.
This has been a part of my musical evolution. In COVID times, I have learned how to make band or virtual choir videos.
Yeah.
People send in videos and I edit them together.
So my wife's a piano teacher, and it's definitely a struggle.
Teaching lessons over Zoom calls and so on.
Yeah. All right, Adam.
I don't know. I was listening to like Ministry and Prong and like the loudest stuff that I could find at the mall record store, and and I actually remember, Andy, you had a radio show somewhere, and I remember you talking about it on the bus and me hearing that and hearing. I don't really remember anything in particular that you played, but I was very excited that there was like stuff that was harder than the Prong album had on repeat on cassette, and then just started going to shows at I remember going to the matinee shows at Club Soda.
Club Soda.
Yeah.
Joe, was it that Prong tape? Was that the one with Snap Your Fingers, Snap Your Neck?
No. It was, I can't remember the name of it.
Was it Force Fed?
Yes, it was Force Fed.
That's my favorite one.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's so good.
That holds up pretty good.
Didn't Steve Versaw make you a tape? You guys were in like swimming together.
He was on the swim team briefly.
Yes, he was.
He was in Spork with Joel.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
But I don't
Steve
remember.
Definitely made me a tape at some point. And
Okay.
I don't know if he probably did for them too. I was in some class with him or something like that, and he gave me a tape that had Navio Forge on it. That earlier Sarah Kirsch band, and that was pretty big. That was influential. I don't remember what else was on it.
Well, and I remember that you all kind of pivoted from doing like fun, goofy pop punk stuff to still kind of being fun and goofy, but like it was clear that you had heard Cap and Jazz. in the Renobs. Like at the end of the Renobs, it could have very.
That would be our middle period.
Yeah.
Barbecue was the transition song, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, but even before that, some of the songs before we even changed the name and stuff like that were more definitely Captain Jazz.
There's like some lost recordings. Remember when we tried to record with that one dude with the curly hair? I forget his name, and he was working at the local public broadcast station, and he was like, "Oh, I'll just record you with the cameras." And we were like, "What could go wrong?" And
Andy
we went in there.
Me that.
Yeah. I thought that had been lost to history, but
I have
this was years ago.
I think I have it. I think it's in my parents' basement, I'm guessing.
Adam Kuthi, archivist.
First day of school was the jam, though.
That was a good one. Yeah, that was a good one.
Punky Brewster, 2-pound burrito.
Does anybody remember how we Secret Agent Man? Yeah, there was.
Oh, Secret Agent Man. Yeah, I loved that song.
Yeah.
I wrote that. It was one of our worst, but
I remember there was a controversy about singing that at the talent show because there was a threat against the life of the president, and we thought we would get in trouble. Because the Secret Service is definitely tuned in to high school talent shows.
there was definitely a line, "I'm going to kill the president." And I believe when I delivered that line that Andy then knocked me over, like bodily, which I did not see coming.
That I don't recall.
You never do.
Yeah.
One other thing I'd say for the for the Michigan focus is, so there was Weston coming through, and then there was Captain Jazz stuff coming from Chicago. Like we had friends visiting. Like there was a crew of folks that came from Madison, Wisconsin, and had hung out in Chicago and kind of hung out with the Captain Jazz kids, and then they stayed in Kalamazoo for a little while, and so they really were kind of big proponents of Captain Jazz. And I know somehow Joe Mattson from Constatine was connected to them too, because I remember selling their records and things like that. But so we were definitely all into Captain Jazz. But then there's also there was the Grand Haven scene, which was like an hour and a half north of us.
Yeah.
Was definitely tilted towards pop punk. There was the Jimmy Hoffa experience, and I don't remember some of the other bands. Yeah, definitely.
Oh boy, to be a teenager.
Yeah. I think that's kind of like, this is such a nostalgia trip, like through high school for us. Like we were I don't know, we were so young then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I know that feeling.
So I also recorded the Renobs demo with my friend in my hometown of Allegan, Michigan, and you guys came. And you guys also played a show at that house too.
Yeah, in the A-frame in the junkyard.
Yes,
I remember playing there.
And there's a VHS.
Recorded it.
There's a VHS from that show too.
Does anybody have a copy?
In Adam's? It's in Adam's parents' basement.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you ever get a copy of that, please let me know, because I lost my copy of that years ago.
If I remember right, it was there were 8 people there.
Yeah.
And half of them were kind of proto-goth,
Yeah, that sounds right.
Probably.
And then
Was it
the
a
other
pole
half.
barn or something?
No, it was like a weird little A-frame. Excuse me, a nice little A-frame house.
No, it was weird. It was definitely weird. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember being a weird building.
It was an A-frame hooked onto a garage, hooked onto a garage, hooked onto a house, which was also hooked onto a garage in a junkyard.
I think the series of garages is what stands out the most, probably.
Yeah, that was his separate home. That was his home. Mm-hmm. I think he even paid rent for that and stuff. He had to work to live there and stuff, so they didn't give a shit. Nobody was really there ever. Anyway, his grandparents were always in Florida, so we could do whatever we wanted. And we played. We set up shows, and I say shows in quotes because our band would just play, and then we just play some Black Sabbath riffs or something until people would show up, and people would just show up. And that was one of those times. I somehow got you guys to play there, and you showed up, and it was awesome. And these people just kind of wandered in, and we didn't tell them to.
That's awesome.
It was very fun.
Yeah, I guess when you're in high school, you go to the 17-year-old kid you know whose parents aren't at home.
Let's go to the junkyard and see a show.
Didn't you have generator shows out in the literal junkyard?
Yeah, we did. It was just our shitty band out in the middle of a junkyard playing in front of 4 people with a generator.
Sounds awesome.
7 Second Samurai?
5 Second Samurai. That,
5
yeah.
second. I'm sorry, I added a couple seconds.
Yeah.
5 Second Samurai.
Too many seconds, yeah.
You were thinking of 7 Seconds of Summer. That's a boy
Yes.
band.
I was thinking of 7 Seconds.
So you guys haven't asked me about my musical beginnings, and it's really all
Nobody
about
wants
boy
to know
bands.
that. We don't want to know that, Dusty.
It's all about boy bands.
It's all about boy bands.
Let's hear
There,
it.
I'm done.
Is
I'm
that
done.
it?
That's it.
Period.
No, that was it. That was it.
It's all about Simon and Garfunkel with you, Dusty. It always has.
It actually was. I always felt like I was the late adopter and the poser, you know, because like everybody else was like super into punk and whatever, and I was like, so minor what? Minor threat? Like that was always me. But I really got it. I feel like I got all of this stuff from Andy and Adam and Andrea. Like I just sort of followed their lead.
There's no way you got anything from me because I never knew what was going on.
Well, you and I had that in common.
But Dusty, you were always really interested in music and just like in a more global sense. Yeah.
Super interested in music and in its many different varieties. And, you know, for those of you who know me now, like I make my living as a choir teacher, but like, but yeah, as a like being into punk, like, I enjoyed that. I super loved it. The whole experience, the playing shows, the going to fests, you know, like was just huge for me. But as far as like knowing the bands and having the LPs and all that kind of stuff, I always felt like I was like the slow one on that side of things.
Well, let me ask you a follow-up question, Dusty. Were you in it deep enough that you still have like the 14-year-old you that like calls you a sellout, like when you go to work in the morning and stuff? Like, is that like, do you feel like you have abandoned the revolution, or did that not happen for you?
Yeah, no, that did not happen for me.
Oh, you're so lucky, dude.
Yeah.
My prick 14-year-old self is still real loud in my head. And
like, I don't know, you guys might have noticed, like, you know, I'm half drunk already. And like, you know, I mean, I don't feel bad about not being straight edge anymore at all, you know? Like, yeah, none of that
I think I'm
shit.
the only one of us who was never on that tip, I think.
Which is ironic because you drink the least of any of us.
Yeah.
Well, part of that now is because my blood pressure medication gets weird if I do. But that's also true.
I'd like to tell my 14-year-old self that I'm holding a copy of Flesh Gordon 2, Flesh Gordon Meets the Cosmic Cheerleaders on VHS, like right behind me right now, and I think he'd be pretty stoked because it's still a good movie.
On that note, Andrea, how did, like, we were kind of talking about this before we pressed record, but like, how weird was it for you to be just constantly in the company of weird, pervy teenage boys?
It really... I absorbed it so quickly that it just seemed normal. Like, I find it weird that a lot of my friends didn't know the masturbatory habits of all their male friends when they were... Like, I remember several years ago, the four of us got together with... It might have even been you, Rich. I can't remember. It was somebody was back in town, and we hooked up and hung out with some people, and we're reminiscing, and like I had like dropped some truth bombs about like the things you guys used to tell me, and I remember Adam like being a bit mortified, like I didn't realize we told you all that. And I'm like, oh, the things I know about you gentlemen.
Yeah.
But
it was bad.
We were all like, I always felt, my family was always really goofy, and like oddballs weren't weird for me, and I had friends in a lot of different cliques, and I kind of, it wasn't super, revolutionary for me to have too many weirdos. Like I took to it. I think it was like, yeah, weirdos for sure. I'm there. and because I remember people always being a bit like some of my friends who were like people I've known from like a younger age, you know, and they were like in very different, you know, circles. And I was always, you know, being like, if I didn't know you, I would make a lot of assumptions about you based on the people that you hung out with. Like they all assumed like that they would assume like I like done a lot of drugs and like, you know, do a lot of things and whatnot. And I never did. And I'm like, by the time they thought those things, I'm like, all my friends were way over their drug phase in middle school. Like, these guys are all straight edge now. Like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like, it was just, you know, it was, I knew it was weird, but it was a normal weird. So, you know, it was cool. Like, these guys are like brothers to me, and they were that way. You know, like, we bonded randomly pretty well. Because I think if it had been weird for me, I wouldn't have stuck around. So, like, I just, you know, absorbed it and was like, yeah, all right, cool.
Well, did you find? I mean, I personally didn't, but I'm just curious on your insight on it. Like, did you find there to be any sort of like misogyny in Kalamazoo from that scene?
I don't. I'm sure there was. I'm fairly obtuse to this day. I just kind of take things at face value. I remember it a lot more, not so much from the punk guys and from that scene. I remember it because there was a lot of women in the mix, and it was there was a lot more like feminism and empowerment and stuff like that in those groups than from the other groups. Like, I remember getting a lot of that shit from like people when I was in like the school band, and like everybody like, oh, this girl thinks she's gonna drum, and then like them being surprised that I actually knew how, and it's like having a vagina doesn't really affect my ability to have hand-eye coordination. So there was a lot of that in other places. I don't recall it that much in that group, really, because there was definitely not as many women and females in the groups, but they were definitely present at the shows, and they weren't taking any shit. So, I didn't. I remember being always impressed with the three of these idiots because they were always very reasoned, and they didn't pull their punches about shit we were going to talk about just because I was the only one of us who didn't have a penis. So, and then, they were always so like kind of socially forward and socially justicey and stuff like that, which I thought was awesome. I remember being constantly afraid that they were going to get the shit kicked out of them when we would go places and they would confront somebody who's being a dick.
Really?
Because they would just try to reason with drunk idiots, and I'm like, dude,
that was
they
me.
Don't want to hear. Yeah, that was 100% you guys, and and so I remember being constantly afraid, like, oh shit, they're gonna die, and I don't have a ride home. So I remember a lot of that, and I remember occasionally using like feminine presence in rather aggressive punk rock to kind of disarm people who would have started trouble. Like, things would like kind of get a little heavy in like the moshiness, and you could tell there were a couple people who were like, if we let them keep going on the wild hair they're about to go on, like there's going to be property damage, and then then Derek and those guys are going to get into trouble. And I remember like sidling up to dudes who were like a hair's breadth away from starting shit and just kind of like linking arms and being like, yeah, like punk rock, and then they'd be like, what? And they would just forget what they were doing, and they would just kind of like, all right, let's just dance around and not start like aggressively punching people or something.
Yeah.
It was weird.
I got to add on to that because there's two great stories here that you're talking about, Andrea, and I'm not sure, but both of them might be from that Grand Haven show that we played with Sidekick Kato and a couple other bands.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And one of them, some dude after the show was like, "Oh, it's so fucking cool that you guys have a chick drummer. Like, I've never seen a chick drummer." And Andrea just sort of like a total baller just said, "And you never will." And then she just turned around and walked away. And I was like, hell yeah.
What does that even mean?
I don't know, but it was fucking cool. And I mean, like, maybe you were taking it literally, like it was okay. But,
well, it was clearly like, I'm a woman drummer, motherfucker. But
yeah, motherfucker. And then the other one was, speaking of reasoning with drunk assholes, and I believe it was Andy who basically saved me from great bodily harm. Like, so we were like, after we had played, because I think we played first or second, and then, the bands that people knew about got up to play, and we were all in there, and people were moshing, and we were like, hey, just settle down, guys, we can all have a good time. And some dude like came up to me and was like, go ahead, hit me. And I was like, why do you behave like this? And he was like, hit me. And I was like, I don't understand what you're doing right now. Let's discuss. And then I kind of turned around, and apparently he was about to just swing at me. And Andy, I was told later, I did not know this at the time, I was told later, Andy, that you just came up right behind him and put him in a full Nelson and dragged him to the back of the Elks Club that those shows were held in. And I just blissfully walked away, never realizing that this guy was about to punch me in the back of the head. But you had just grabbed him and just dragged him away from that, and that was like the end of the story,
Huh. I totally don't remember that, but that does remind me, if I did do that, that was something learned from Joel Wick.
The bear hug.
From when, I distinctly remember when Spitboy played in Kalamazoo at Dagobah Square. They started up, and some kids lit off like fireworks or firecrackers inside, like right up at the front of the show, and Joel had this like totally cool, nonchalant kind of sidled up to this guy and was like, oh, that was awesome. Did you do that, man? And the guy's like, yeah, that was me. And Joel grabbed him and like just hauled him, 100 feet across and tossed his ass out on the street. And it was beautiful to see. It was really good.
Joel had the benefit of being like 8 feet tall. So
true. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Derek had a bit of a temper, so worst case scenario, Derek would definitely back Joel up too.
I mean, this is an interesting thing to talk about. It's totally off topic from Insogrey, but when I first got into the scene in Kalamazoo, there was like an enforced ban on moshing pretty completely for a few years. And I think it came from the influence of Fugazi and then Ebullition Records and stuff like that people were kind of turning away from it. But it was pretty intense. I mean, the first like local show I went to was at Club Soda, and I think perhaps Andrea, your sister's band, played. It was like local bands. It was Bastard Children.
Was it her? Because she had her. It was a birthday party. Basically, her graduation party there.
Yeah, it could have been her graduation party
at Club Soda, and all the people I remember being there, like you and Neil and JC and all those guys were there, and they had a bunch of bands playing. It wasn't her. I don't know that her band played at that point, but
okay, but I thought it had something to do with her. So it was her graduation party, and I specifically remember asking. There's this other guy around the scene named Bob Cosby. And I was like, hey man, will you put me up? Like, will you put me up on the crowd? Because I'd been to like bigger shows and seen crowd surfing and stuff like that. And he looked at me and he said, no, but I'll pull you down. And I was like 13 or something. I was like, Jesus Christ, what did I do wrong there? I was like, that was a if I'd known the word faux pas, like it was like that was that was
by that point, like that shit started to get co-opted by like the jock a-holes who the ones who used to make fun of people for liking punk and shit like that, and then they're like, oh wait, this is a way we can be aggressive, and so they kind of like co-opted it, and everybody's like, all right, fuck it, we're not doing it anymore.
But there was a few years, and then there was a reversal when we decided, when Jihad started or something, like, okay, I guess we can mosh again.
Oh yeah.
I remember it was either that or people would just stealthily get naked in the middle.
They would get naked.
Moshing or getting naked during shows. It was one of the two.
Let me just say that I'll pull you down should have been that I'll pull you down line should have been punctuated by 4 hits on a China ride.
Did Insogrey ever play out of Michigan? I don't think you guys did, and I feel like I was at easily 75% of your shows, but
we played Kalamazoo, Ann Arbor, Grand Haven, Allegan.
Maybe Holland.
There was like a weird garage show in Holland.
Yep.
Couple of different shows in Kalamazoo.
Yeah.
And we played in Marshall,
I don't think we ever
Marshall, Michigan.
Marshall,
Yeah.
yes, we played in
It was a
Marshall.
benefit for a funeral.
Was
we
it?
we never played out of Michigan.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So how did you guys start as Insogrey? Like you were Renobs, and then what happened?
I think we heard Constantine.
Well, there was
seriously.
already, like we were saying, there was like a song, like there was a bit of a transition to stuff that was a little more intense and like not quite as poppy, and then we just kind of realized like we're not really inhibiting or like inhabiting the Renob mentality anymore, and so we just started transitioning.
It was sort of a sense of taking ourselves seriously and then like rapidly taking ourselves too seriously.
Yeah.
Was it
about right.
Was it
You
sort
guys
of,
did.
What was the name of
did
the
not.
band? Was it Juniper's
Juniper's Secret Lover was the
Secret
band.
Lover? Was that band predated Insogrey, if I recall, right?
I think they
Sounds vaguely
overlapped.
familiar.
Whose band was that?
It was me and Chris and Marissa
And me.
Brandy McDonald.
What did Brandy do in it?
Oh, the brand.
The Brandy and Marissa both sang.
Oh, wow.
I
Okay.
remember
I
that.
think, right? Is that right?
Yeah,
Am I making that
think
up?
So yeah, I think she showed up for one practice and then another one because we only had 2 songs. But yeah,
Yeah. Did we play a show though somehow?
Yeah, you played our like tour kickoff for the first one back in '95. It was at that basement on Lake Street.
The one by the milk factory?
Yeah, the Kalamazoo
No,
Creamery. Yes, yeah.
Oh, I thought it was by the bakery.
No, milk factory for sure.
Oh, I remember it smelling like bread, but I guess it smelled like milk.
Yeah.
Milk Factory. That's the
I don't
most
know.
Midwestern thing ever.
It's a long time ago. It smelled like casseroles.
I feel like there was a bakery somewhere near there, though. so
That's
you
what
might
I'm
not-
saying.
Is on Portage and Mill. There's like an like an Aunt Annie's or something like that, or Aunt Millie's.
Aunt Millie's, yeah.
Aunt
See, I'm
Millie's,
not-
yeah, and everywhere it smells
crazy.
like bread. Yeah.
I'm not crazy.
Do you think the bakery goes over to the milk factory like, hey, I got all these cookies. What are you going to do? Can we do a little trade-off here?
Is that spice extraction factory still a thing in Kalamazoo too? I
Oh,
remember it would alternately
yeah,
smell like
Todd's,
peppermint or
J.R.
cinnamon.
Todd's.
Yeah, no, it's a
Still a
spearmint place.
thing?
Yeah, it's down
Yeah.
by the Versluis Dickinson baseball fields off
Yeah,
of like Douglas. Yeah.
And does
Yeah,
it
they're
still
used-
smell like minty every once in a while? Like I remember like
Yeah.
fall, like
They will.
I don't know. In Vicksburg, we have a dog food factory, and sometimes it smells like dog food.
That's
There's
not
a dog
good
food
thing.
factory in Fenville, too.
Yeah.
I think that was in Hamilton.
Oh, Hamilton.
Yeah.
Yep.
Lollipops. Lollipops.
Oh, that's
yeah.
that's good.
Yeah.
We're hitting
Yeah, it's
all the
great.
important
It's great that you
Insogrey
guys-
history here.
Yeah, it's great that you guys started this this podcast where we could discuss the intersection of Southwest Michigan economic development and
what it's slowly
early
turning
early '90s hardcore.
Yeah. Yeah, the funny thing is we were all vegan, not all of us, but most of us were vegan, yeah.
But I'd like to thank you for telling me which neighborhood smelled like what, because we didn't cover that. It's working out really good.
You need to reestablish your olfactory map here. Come on.
Yeah,
If I recall, Ian, kind of speaking to that, there was a time that either us and or Insogrey played that basement on Lake, and there was a 7-Eleven probably about a half a mile down the road on what was that, on Portage? Was that right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. And you and Andy went there, and some dudes just randomly walked in and kind of started giving you shit, and Andy kind of diffused it, but it was like, you look like that dude from Weezer, and Andy's like, oh yeah, he kind of does.
Disarming was kind of
Andy's thing.
a saving grace a lot of the time.
yeah, it's a good move.
Yep.
Yeah. It's, I was thinking about this. I think that really Insogrey was kind of a victim of circumstances that, you guys were about to do a 7-inch and then you broke up.
We were about to play the Detroit Fest.
Yeah. That was a bummer, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to that.
Me too.
Yeah.
What was it that Merce had to do? Was
Work.
It was work? Okay.
She had just gotten a job at a movie theater and didn't want to ask for the time off because she had just gotten the job.
Oh.
And I remember just feeling like we had kind of ranked the band in different priorities at that point. Because playing the Detroit Fest was, going to be the highlight of my life at that point. And
is that why we didn't invite her to this interview?
Yeah, that's probably why.
No, I don't think there's. At least on. Yeah, it would bum me out that she ended up kind of in effect kind of breaking up the band. Not that it should be put on her, but
she didn't. Like, it was me because I was so pissed. It was a sense of like, well, if you don't care about it that much, like this is something that means so much to me, and that you wouldn't even try to get time off work or something like that. I think I was like, I don't want to do it. But looking back on it, I think I was about to leave Kalamazoo to go to college in Ann Arbor also. So it probably would have been trickier to keep it going. And you guys were all
know that it summer before college for all of us, wasn't it? Because Andy, you had taken the a gap year, and then we were all a year behind. So everybody was kind of getting their ducks in a row for school, and
yeah, I think things were changing. So
I think we were all just kind of starting to head in different ways.
Didn't
That's kind of the way high school stuff goes.
Besides Sandy?
Yeah.
Say it again?
Yeah.
They all went to K College except for you, I think.
Yeah, we all were going separate ways and inadvertently all ended up going to the same school. I remember I had no idea it was happening until we were talking randomly, and I'm like, oh yeah, where are you guys going to school? And you and Adam and Dusty were like, oh, we're going to K. I'm like, wait a minute, so high. Did we?
We weirdly didn't hang out that much though. Like
no,
I didn't see you guys, but more than once the entire 4 years.
Well, it was
until Adam and I went on foreign study, and that was it.
Yeah. You lived at home in Portage. Adam lived
at home,
in the Adam continued the punk rock lifestyle in the the student neighbor. Yeah, exactly. And then I did the full campus thing, and it was weird in a small liberal arts college that we still managed to find 3 different worlds to exist in for a while.
For sure. Yeah. There was a ton of people from our graduating class that went there, and I had no idea until I randomly see him around. I'm like, wait a minute, I know that dude. It was super odd. And then Andy went to U of M.
Yep. And Marissa went to K as well, didn't she?
She did for about a year, and then she transferred to Florida.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, and so post Insogrey, I guess Adam did Agna Moraines. You did Trustfall, I guess, Andy. I don't know if there were other bands other than that you did. Did anyone else do anything? Or?
I tried to, because I had a roommate my freshman year at college who was into playing guitar, and Matt Gay is his name. He lives in Japan now, I think. And he was a cool dude, and we tried to he got me into Radiohead, which is a band I still really, really like. And we tried to start some bands, and basically all the songs we wrote were shit, and it just never went anywhere. And so I tried, but never captured that lightning in a bottle again. That was Insogrey.
You guys were really good, and I do think that if you had put out the 7-inch, obviously more people would know of you than that you had those 2 songs off the demo that ended up on the Food Not Bombs comp. But whenever anyone hears you, they love that Scrams Gold, I guess, as the children call it.
Scrams Gold?
That is the first I'm hearing of this.
What does that mean?
Scrams is
what younger kids call like screamo these days.
Screamo jams.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, like, so I told you guys, and you all know that I'm a choir teacher now. And once upon a time, I let slide that I was in a band to some of my students. And so they found out, and somehow somebody found our stuff posted on YouTube, which is a whole nother funny story because Andy was like, oh shit, we're on YouTube. And we were like, did you put it there? No. Did you put it there? No. And like, we couldn't figure out who put our shit on YouTube. And then, Andy, you had this whole story about some dude in Russia, but you can go into that next. But it's just funny because, like, here I am in this, like, small town in Michigan teaching choir, and then occasionally kids will just be like, their older sister or something will be like, oh, yeah, do you know about Mr. Morris's band? They'll be like, what? They'll be like, yeah, here you go. And then they're like, this is the most terrible thing I've ever heard. Like, this is my choir teacher? Like, this is, you teach us to sing and this is what you did? Like, it's wild.
I think the source of it actually initially was me. I'd gotten, I think, MP3s from Andy, and I shared them on a MP3 blog that I was doing with some friends at the time. And I think some weird kid who lives like somewhere near Kalamazoo took them and uploaded them to YouTube, and then started asking Andy all kinds of really bizarre pointed questions, as I recall.
Oh, really?
I totally forgot about that. No, I don't even remember that. So,
but there was like a blog from a dude in Russia, or
yeah,
something?
there was a Russian dude that was really into like obscure '90s emo and stuff like that. So, yep.
Yeah,
He tried to put together a little profile of Insogrey, and then you could use like Google Translate to translate it. Pretty funny.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's
Europe was a few years like late for the whole like 90s emo stuff, like, but in the early 2000s they were all about that stuff. It was really weird.
yeah. It was
Also Japan, because some Japanese guy posted a clip of us at our very last show in Goleta, California. And I was like, where the fuck did you get this? And can I have more of it? And he's like, man, I don't know. And I never heard from him again. And it's like, how did you get that?
Yeah.
Who gave you that? It's so weird.
Yeah, I mean, is there any video footage that you guys are aware of Insogrey? Obviously, I know there's some of the Renobs.
God. No.
I don't know of any.
No idea. I would be shocked if there was.
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
This is before everyone had a video on their, a video camera on their phones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Eh.
It's very rare that a dork had a camera, but Well, we are at an hour, and I think this is pretty good. How do you guys feel?
I mean, what did we talk about?
I feel like I could go for 6 or 7 more hours.
Okay, great. Let's just all hunker down, get some coffee, and
I'll say one other thing that I was thinking about, Ian, trying to think about like the evolution of our bands and things like that, and that's kind of just going back to like how much we were all taking in so many different kind of like micro scenes and things like that.
yeah.
And so, I mean, I agree that when after the like Weston to Captain Jazz to kind of the start of Insogrey, it was definitely what was happening around Kalamazoo, especially Constatine Sankathi, but Ordination of Aaron and some of that kind of stuff was pretty influential, and I think we all had a sense of how powerful a lot of those bands were. Current and Ottawa. That's true. Anasarca kids. We saw Anasarca, at least I did, at a couple festivals, and then they came through and stayed at our
Columbus,
house.
right?
And yep, and they were just unfucking believable. I think Anasarca is so overlooked these days about how great they were. But that was a big influence, and Guyver 1 came through and all of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there was like Rich especially was into like moshy hardcore and straight edge and stuff, and that was there too. You know, I really liked Youth of Today and Judge and Earth Crisis to an extent.
Crisis,
Strife,
Chokehold.
You know, absolutely Chokehold, definitely the like more political side hardcore. And so like that sound wasn't as much in the music, but like if you look at that insert from our demo, it's so like kind of stylistically and genre like schizophrenic or all over the place. You know, I mean, because it's got it and all of that stuff. I feel like in terms of like doing a kind of like visual aesthetics for the band, we never settled on anything. It was just like a weird hodgepodge of all of that stuff, of like weird emo imagery of kids and you know, like either like a kind of sad kids black and white photo aesthetic.
Sad kid, black and white.
Right? No, it's true.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the YouTube channel, like the image is from the insert from the Food Not Bombs comp or whatever that we were on, and that was something I think Dusty put together, and it's like a kid fishing or something.
No, it was a kid. It was a kid frolicking in the fountain at Bronson Park.
No, that was something I put in the Constatine.
That was all from my.
insert.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. But you know,
that was another
that kind
like
of
high
thing.
school photo class.
Let me just throw this out there. Vine was possibly
Totally.
an influence on the aesthetic.
Yeah, so that Vine 7-inch of the kids playing, and it's like a black and white photo. So I mean that was there. So the playground image, and then there was like the zine cut and paste stuff that I put in, and then you have the flip side of that insert, which is Marissa with an X'd up hand, you know, looking tough at the suburbs or whatever. But like we were into that shit too, you know, like that. We definitely not in those bands weren't touring through Kalamazoo as much. That was kind of on the other side of the state, but we were all kind of curious and interested in it. And I remember like the very last song or two of Insogrey that we wrote was totally influenced by the Snapcase LP, the second Snapcase LP, Caboose and stuff. Like a lot of more like you know, those kinds of little things with more moshy riffs and stuff behind it. So it was I think just a sense of like taking up all this music that sounded amazing and where we had seen some really passionate and powerful live shows and just trying to put all that together and channel it together. So
well, and if you think about our songwriting process, I mean, the way, you know, if we really want to do this like VH1 shit right now, like our songwriting process was like somebody would walk in, sometimes me, and I'd be like, guys, I came up with this really cool riff, like check it out, and then I'd play it, and Adam would be like, that's shit, I will never play that. And then we'd be like, okay, well then, all right, then now no, it actually was shit though, so you saved me from myself. But then Andy would be like, well wait, what about this? And then he'd play something, and then I'd be like, well what if I played this along with it? And then Adam would be like, okay, well, and then we would spend like an hour just like fucking noodling on this riff. And like, so Andy's playing like Snapcase, like lead guitar lines, and I'm playing like Nirvana power chords, and Adam is playing like, I don't know, Primus bass lines. No, that's not true. I don't know what Adam's playing. And then,
and then it was like pulling teeth to get me to do something beside a basic rhythm because I had zero creativity and limited skill.
Andrea just Ringo Stars over top of it, you know. And that was sort of like, so this like patchwork quilt that we came up with. I mean, it reflects the songwriting process, you know. So you know, Andy, kind of just to back up what you were saying there.
And well, I would maybe add to that one other thing was like Kalamazoo, in addition to having like a surprisingly robust like underground music scene, was also just like like a culturally rich place that like punched way above its class. I feel like it had like the first show I ever went to. Friends were playing in the Kalamazoo Junior Symphony, so I went to the symphony and then walked over to Club Soda, and like we had like a art. I don't know. I just feel like there were like things happening there that most kind of like Rust Belt towns of that size like just didn't have, and I don't know.
No, and that's still true. Yeah. That's still true. You know, with like the Gilmore Keyboard Festival and the Symphony and
like the Art Institute, like had
several,
some, like,
the KIA and several successful like. In some cases, professional theater companies and community theater companies. Like, it's true at Kalamazoo.
It was an intersection got a lot of flack, a lot of levels. It was an intersection of different people and different styles and a rich, like robust musical like support system of different things. And being midway between Detroit and Chicago, I think also helped because you had like it was there was a pipeline and we were right there.
Yeah. Well, and Joel got a lot of flack, but Ian and I have talked about this, and I think Andy and I have before. Like, he brought a lot of the world to us that, like, we wouldn't have been there otherwise.
For sure.
He took us from being, like, a college town with college bands to being a place where a certain subsect of hardcore punk wanted to come and play.
But not only that, like indie rock and like other weird shit. Like, I mean, again, if you looked at our record collections when we were kids, it was like weird indie pop, punk, and just like classic rock. It's all this crazy shit going on at the same time. And like I've said before, and other things, like it was not uncommon to have like a pop punk band, a crusty band, and like anything be at a show, and everybody's fine with that. Nobody's like, ew, I only want to see the crust band or the pop punk band or whatever, you know.
Well, like, you remember when we played with the Dismemberment Plan?
Oh, that show! I think I was the only paying person at the show.
At 31G, and it was like a terrible ice storm, and it was us and the Dismemberment Plan and like two other people, and we were like,
Doxy was there, I think.
Oh, was that
Doxy? I think played. I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that name of that band.
And I love that band. Like, I bought their cassette. It was that band was great, but definitely not fitting the mold of any of these other kind of styles.
Yeah, and Joel was famous for that.
I remember that because again, I've known Joel for a really long time, like because he was, like I say, he was my sister's boyfriend, and a bit of a behind the scenes peek of seeing him constantly putting together show spaces and having them systematically dismantled by the powers that be, and then trying another thing, and like trying to get all ages shows. Like that was a big thing too, like geting all ages shows and finding spaces for that. And like it was a constant struggle, and he was definitely on the front lines for that, and it created a lot of opportunities for people to really like it. I remember being constantly, like, I was the least plugged into the scene of everybody. Like I was randomly super plugged in from that one avenue, but again, obtuse and oblivious and not really like, as you guys are rattling off names of bands, I'm like, nope, no idea what you're talking about. But I was very much aware of the crazy broad, like grassroots network of different styles of punk and underground and straight edge that was just like spider webbed all over the continental, US and then into Canada, stuff like that. Like it was out there, and it was in a time where like the internet was not a thing. So the network that was created of people like Heart Attack magazine and all those things, and like just random people's phone numbers that they kept for years and decades because they were the one connection you had on the other side of the country to find out about like what punk rock shows are coming up in your thing. Like the work that had to go into like trying to do this when everything was like against you, like it was impressive and crazy, and knowing that was out there was super inspiring. And it's interesting to see how like that kind of like bootstrap mentality of things, like seeing that in different modern variations now is like I feel like I saw the roots of that in the punk scene for sure.
In the all ages thing, I mean, that was huge.
It's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Well, we were all 17 at the time, like, you know?
Yeah. or younger,
Yeah.
and it was all ages, and it was people who were straight edge. So it was like there were like, you know, to a certain extent, there was a lot of like clean stuff going on that was like clean entertainment, like that was like against violence and against all this other stuff in these spaces, and that was so lost on the people who were older, who just all they heard was loud screaming and thought, you're like, oh God, no, like this is terrible. Like, and it was so interesting to see, like, it was just not ever what anybody expected, and just it was constantly disarming.
Well, there was a zine back in the late 80s, early 90s. I don't remember the name of it, but it did sort of a review for different cities across the U.S. and their scenes. And they talked about Kalamazoo. And the thing I remember was, everyone wears glasses here. Like we were the least threatening. Even me, I was a big dude. Like, I was a big dude, but like, none of us were particularly threatening, like, at all.
Not
like,
at all. No.
Yeah.
No.
Which is why I lived in constant fear of you guys all getting your asses kicked.
Yeah, but somehow we survived it.
Yeah. No, because again, disarming. You don't expect it. You like see these people like screaming and doing stuff, and you expect a certain thing, and then you talk to them, you're like, oh, hey guys, what's going on? Do you like farts? Like, and you're like, okay.
I can.
Yeah.
Tell us about how you masturbate.
I can turn my uncircumcised penis into a bird. Want to see?
Right? Like, I'm gonna eat this like pita bread with nutritional yeast, and you tell me all about it. Like, you never knew. Like, it came at you so sideways that like you were in before you even knew you wanted to be. Like, it's amazing. Like, that was the cool thing too. Like, everybody that I knew, like, we were doing things for, like, it was like, again, like kind of social justice-y, like the Food Not Bombs thing. Like, that was like money for like people who needed to eat. Like, we did like a Youth United Way benefit show, and it was all these fun things. Like, the people I knew who were into this, I think. Yeah, like the people I knew who were into this were like, I see that now, like, as like their journey into like adulthood and like, you know, being good people. Like, that was all, like, that all had like tendrils into that scene. Like, it all had very positive, like, I'm sure there was plenty of negative shit, but there was so many positive, amazing things like plugged in and interwoven into that whole scene that, like, when I hear the music and stuff like that, like, that's what's like evocative for me, is like, I know the people who were out there, and like they were the best people in the world, you know?
Yeah, people who give a shit.
Nobody at large realized that, and it was just kind of like this like badass fucking secret of how awesome everybody was. And
as a teenager, it's nice to have that too, that like going to school on a Monday and being like, oh, well, I know a bunch of shit you don't. Like, I have this secret world, you know.
Yeah.
I went to a show yesterday. What did you do? You know.
Right. Yeah.
You guys.
Thanks for inviting us, Rich.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah,
it's nice
absolutely.
talking to everybody.
This is really cool.